For decades, they were nothing more than names in dusty files, faces frozen in black and white photographs. Cases whispered about, but never answered. Families waited, investigators retired. Time moved on. But in 2025, the past came knocking. This is the story of how modern DNA technology reopened doors that had been closed for decades. It finally gave answers to families who had almost lost hope. The era of unsolved cases, cold cases, are crimes that remain unsolved for years, sometimes generations. Before modern forensic science, investigators relied on eyewitnesses, fingerprints, or confessions. If those failed, the case often stalled forever. Evidence degraded. Witnesses passed away. Leads went cold. By the early 2000s, thousands of murders and disappearances around the world remained unresolved. Not because police didn't care, but because science simply wasn't ready. That changed. The DNA revolution. DNA had been used in criminal investigations since the late 20th century. But its power was limited. Early tests required large, clean samples, something most old cases didn't have. In the 2010s and 2020s, everything evolved. By 2025, investigators had access to advanced DNA extraction from tiny, degraded samples, genetic genealogy. Using public ancestry databases, AI-assisted DNA matching, familial DNA tracing. Identifying relatives of unknown suspects or victims. What once seemed impossible suddenly became routine. Cold cases started cracking one by one. Case 1. A nameless victim finally identified in one breakthrough case from 2025. A skeletal remains discovered decades earlier were finally identified. For years, the victim was known only as Jane Doe. No missing persons match, no identity, no justice. Using genetic genealogy, forensic scientists uploaded the victim's DNA to genealogy databases. Within weeks, distant relatives were identified. Family trees were rebuilt backwards. After nearly 40 years, the victim had a name again. For the family, it wasn't closure, but it was truth. Case 2. A killer hiding in plain sight. Another case involved a murder committed in the late 1980s. The crime scene evidence had been preserved, but early DNA tests failed. In 2025, investigators retested the evidence using modern sequencing. A partial DNA profile was enough. Instead of searching criminal databases, they searched family trees. The trail led to a man living quietly under a different identity, a grandfather, respected by neighbors. When confronted with the evidence, decades of silence collapsed. A killer who believed he had outrun time was finally exposed. Case 3. The disappearance that wasn't forgotten. Some breakthroughs weren't about murder, but about missing people. In one case, a teenager who vanished in the early 1990s was finally located, not alive, but identified. No body had ever been found. No witnesses came forward. A single hair recovered from old clothing provided the DNA link investigators needed. Genetic genealogy traced relatives. Records were cross-checked. After more than 30 years, the family learned what happened. Painful, yes. But uncertainty had been worse. Why 2025 was different. What made 2025 stand out wasn't just technology, it was collaboration. Law enforcement agencies began working with independent forensic labs, academic researchers, genealogy experts, international DNA databases. Cases once ignored due to lack of resources were reopened. Public interest also played a role. Documentaries, podcasts, and true crime reporting kept pressure on authorities to revisit old mysteries. Justice delayed was no longer justice denied. Ethical questions and controversy? These breakthroughs didn't come without debate. Using public DNA databases raised serious questions. Consent, privacy, data misuse. Some people never imagined their ancestry tests could help solve a murder or implicate a relative. Governments and courts are still defining where the line should be drawn. But for families of victims, one truth remains clear: answers matter. What this means for the future, experts believe thousands more cold cases can still be solved. Evidence lockers hold untold stories waiting for science to catch up. With continued advances in DNA phenotyping, AI crime modeling, international data sharing, the past is no longer safe for those who committed crimes in silence. Time is no longer their shield. Final thoughts? Cold cases remind us of something important. Justice doesn't expire. Truth doesn't disappear. And science never forgets. In 2025, DNA gave voices back to the forgotten and proved that, even decades later, the truth can still be found. Some mysteries were finally solved. Others are next.